Now we get to talk about labor unions and labor relations. And first we'll do a brief history of unions, at least in the United States. We could go back a little further, but I won't bore you with the details. So the Knights of Labor, established in 1869 and disbanded during the Depression. So that would have been shortly after the Civil War, and labor was starting to feel its oats a little bit and starting to make some demands, but it said it did disband. But in 1886, the AFL, or American Federation of Labor, was started with Samuel Gompers. He's kind of historical note in terms of labor union, right? And it was a federation of unions of skilled workers. So in that time, it might have been silversmiths or leather workers or iron workers, you know, those types of particular skills that they would have had back then, right? In 1894, the Pullman strike was the first major strike in the U.S. and it wasn't carried out by the AFL. It was carried out by another union. Ultimately, you know, Pullman cars, if you've heard of those, they were the maker of rail cars, and it was really putting a damper on the economy of the U.S. the fact that the strike was going on, that the government called in troops, and I'm not so sure that they might not have even shot a union member or two. I threw this in because I think they used to have a connection here in Montana, but the Wobblies, they were called, the industrial workers of the world, and they promoted and still do. If you go to there's actually still a website. I don't know that they have an active union presence, but they actually do have a website, and you go to that, and they still promote socialism. So they were probably backers of Bernie Sanders. In 1935, now we saw the formation of the Congress for Industrial Organizations, so the CIO, okay, and they organize in industries and regardless of the skill. So imagine like building trains, okay, whether it's train cars or train engines or whatever the case may be, and imagine the different skill sets that went into that: the iron workers, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers, whatever, electricians, whatever the case may be. There's probably a dozen of them, and they each had separate unions. Well, that would cause a lot of difficulties, both probably for the unions and for the employers trying to figure out who they needed to deal with. And so the CIO came along and organized those, like we had the United Auto Workers and still do, as an example today. But in 55, the AFL and CIO merged, and at that time, and for quite some time thereafter, they were, I think, actually the largest union in the nation. That has certainly changed now. So, introduction: employment, labor laws are very emotional, right? And politically charged topics. They go to how a business makes money and how people make a living. If you've noticed around Havre, if you're in this area, that there's all kinds of signs popping up now that say support nurses. And I hadn't been, I don't think, up here at the college too long, and there was a labor dispute going on with the nurses at that time. And people were parking their cars over on the road between the college and the hospital and had signs in them that said support the nurses. And I haven't really read anything about the current dispute, what happens to be going on with that right now. So let's pause here, and we'll come back for some more in a little bit.